Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to the velvet-draped bedrooms and mahogany chambers of Victorian England, where the night doesn't begin with Netflix or melatonin gummies, but with a firm handshake, a velvet robe, and an astonishingly early decision to shut out the sun. Imagine this. It's mid-afternoon in a sprawling London townhouse, and the gentleman of the house is already closing the drapes. Heavy velvet ones, mind you, so thick they could double as castle ramparts. The sun, barely past its peak, is cast out like an unwanted solicitor. The room darkens with theatrical flare, and the candles, gas lamps, or perhaps even the first flicker of electricity, are summoned not for romance, but for rest. Yes, your host is preparing for an evening nap. And no, this isn't unusual. You're in the heart of 19th century upper-class routine, where daylight and decency have an awkward relationship. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it for you? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the parlor, and it's already dim as dusk. The curtains are closed, not because it's nighttime, but because it's not. Direct sunlight, according to many a Victorian manual, was a dangerous intrusion, particularly for the delicate minds of scholarly men. Sunlight overstimulates the nerves. One pamphlet warns, best let the mind rest in darkness for half the day. You pause. This man has essentially declared war on noon. This wasn't some fringe behavior among the British upper crust, especially the men who didn't need to be in offices or on horses. Controlling light and darkness became part of one's identity. It's less early to bed, early to rise, and more rise when the house stops creaking and return to bed before the cat yawns. Victorian gentlemen, especially the fussy, academic, or aristocratic kind, believed in retiring not once, but multiple times per day. A typical pattern might go like this. Wake around 10, stare wistfully out a rain-streaked window, take coffee in total silence, retreat for a half-hour of mind stillness, translation, nap, reappear for a heavily buttered meal, read poetry aloud to a dog, and then vanish once again for a digestive recline. By mid-afternoon, many would insist on total quiet. Households were trained to respect this contemplative window. Children were hushed. Pianos were silenced. You can almost hear the ticking of a grandfather clock echoing down a hallway like a cannon. Historians still argue whether this midday nap culture was rooted in true fatigue, social signaling, or sheer boredom. Was it a health habit or a performance of refinement? Either way, the result was a world in which rest became more theatrical than sleep itself. Of course, it wasn't just about the nap. It was about where and how you did it. Many gentlemen curated specific rooms for their early retreats. Not bedrooms, but resting chambers. These were stocked with soft velvet chairs angled just so, footstools of precise elevation, and cabinets containing tinctures of lavender, tonics of quinine, or even early sleeping drafts made with laudanum, which, fun fact, is both opium and a terrible idea. It was also considered critical to sleep without vulgarity. No snoring, no tossing, certainly no sleeping in one's shirt sleeves. Gentlemen would often dress in a second set of robes for midday sleep, embroidered, scented, and often absurd. One count reportedly had his afternoon robe shipped from Paris and scented with violet oil. He then changed again before dinner into something less restful but equally useless. Here's the kicker. Many of these same men claim they struggle with sleep. Why? Well, perhaps because their sleep habits were designed less for comfort and more for performative dignity. Sleep was a statement. A midday nap wasn't a luxury. It was a moral position. You weren't just tired. You were sensitive. You were overwhelmed by the cruel glare of day. You were intellectually fatigued from contemplating Roman sculpture for 15 whole minutes before breakfast. You glance around the room. A clock ticks behind layers of damask. A fireplace smolders, despite it being July. There's a book of Horace left open on a chaise. But no one is reading it, because the man of the house has withdrawn, meaning he's in the next room, asleep in a position that resembles a fainting duchess more than a grown adult. Meanwhile, downstairs, the staff tiptoe through routines designed to avoid waking His reclining highness. A teacup must not rattle. A stair must not creak. If they do, well, he'll write a letter. A long, trembling letter to the editor of the Times about how the working classes have no respect for restorative solitude. And here's the twist. Many of these men did this despite having terrible sleep at night. Their schedules were tangled spaghetti bowls of rest, wakefulness, and awkward pauses. One physician in 1863 noted that many gentlemen claim to sleep 4 hours at night and make up the balance in intervals of civilized slumber. Civilized slumber. Imagine trying to pitch that as your excuse for being late to work today. There's something slightly theatrical, even camp, about it all, but that's Victorian masculinity for you. Equal parts repression and embroidered slippers. You're not just watching a man nap. You're witnessing a declaration of identity, woven in linen and lemon-scented pomade. So now you're sitting there, in this quietly breathing house, wondering what's next. Is he waking up? Not yet. The bells haven't chimed, and the hallway runner hasn't been warmed by foot traffic. No Victorian gentleman rises until the floors are less cold than his attitude. Instead, you lean back in the brocade chair. Outside, a horse clops somewhere. Inside, not a single soul stirs. The nap continues, not just a sleep, but a ritual. And you, sleepy listener, are just getting started. You're still perched politely in the parlor when the door creaks open just a fraction. Out glides a gentleman, or rather, he wafts as if gravity is a lower class concern. He's exchanged his earlier lounging robe for something marginally more formal. A quilted nightgown in pale blue, with mother-of-pearl buttons that catch the candlelight. On his head, a pointed cap, silk, of course, with an embroidered monogram and tassel that swings with the gentle swagger of someone who believes he has just woken from a dream of historical significance. And now, we must talk about nightwear. Not for children, not for invalids, but for men. Those same top-hatted, stiff-collared symbols of industrial might and stoicism. Victorian gentlemen took their sleep attire very seriously, in part because it was another opportunity to reinforce one's rank, taste, and adherence to an absurd number of rules. The idea of sleepwear as a style statement wasn't new, but Victorian England elevated it to an art form. The classic image of a man in a long shirt and nightcap is rooted in this era, but that's just the beginning. Gentlemen could spend small fortunes on what they wore to bed, or more accurately, what they wore before bed, in bed, for reading in bed, and even for pacing dramatically around the bed. Mainstream historical records confirm the proliferation of elaborate night sets for men, complete with nightshirts, embroidered naturally, dressing gowns, preferably silk, lined with velvet, nightcaps, sometimes perfumed, and soft-soled slippers for the midnight glide to the study or water closet. It was a miniature wardrobe for an activity where, ideally, no one saw you, except, of course, the valet, or the butler, or the poor maid tasked with setting the bed warmer into coals. Historians still argue whether these outlandish sleep outfits were more about genuine comfort or the expectation of being unexpectedly admired, even while unconscious. A guest might pop by. A neighbor might collapse nearby. You wouldn't want to be caught dreaming in cotton like a commoner. You, meanwhile, are now trailing the gentleman as he shuffles softly into the breakfast room. No, it's not morning. It's 8:30 p.m., but after his second nap and a change of clothing, he prefers a light snack before beginning the descent into night. This often means toast cut into aggressively neat triangles, a poached egg served with alarming reverence, and perhaps a cup of beef tea. Yes, beef tea. Exactly what it sounds like. Broth passed off as a beverage and consumed with the sleepy pride of someone who believes it's medicinal. Nightwear at table? Not unusual. In private settings, it was seen as casual refinement. Some gentlemen even entertained in sleepwear, especially if the guests were other gentlemen in equally ornate robes. The effect was like the pajama party hosted by a parliament. Some sleepwear designs were even customized to align with a man's philosophical leanings. Stoic gentlemen wore somber gray flannel. Romantic poets favored flowing white cotton with wide sleeves and loose sashes. One naturalist in Devon insisted on a moss-colored robe with fern embroidery, so he might better merge with the natural world and dream. He also slept with a hedgehog once, but that's another section. There were guides to night attire, whole booklets on what to wear while retiring. The Gentleman's Nocturnal Companion, 1869, advised against colors of too loud in nature, as they might disturb the repose of the subconscious. It also warned against rough linens, unshaped socks, and mirthful prints, which, apparently, could corrupt the moral spine through dreams. Of course, not everyone adhered to these unwritten codes. Some men took pride in sleeping as plainly as possible, insisting it prove their rugged virility. One earl famously slept in nothing but a wool blanket and a single glove. Why the glove? No one knows, but it was monogrammed, and that's what matters. Still others flirted with spiritualism through sleepwear, pale violet gowns for dream enhancement, blue silk stitched with celestial symbols. An astronomer in Sussex reportedly stitched the phases of the moon into his robe, claiming it inspired subconscious calculations. Whether it worked or not is unclear. He did, however, once wake up convinced he was a telescope. Then there was a curious case of gentlemen who wore formal wear to sleep. A niche practice, sure, but one that emerged among a specific breed of dandy who fear being seen underdressed under any circumstance, even while unconscious. One account describes a man who wore a velvet waistcoat over his nightshirt and kept a cravat loosely tied, lest death visit and find him indecent. Genuinely, there were fears of being discovered dead without sartorial dignity, and what of the famous nightcap, not just for cartoons or Ebenezer Scrooge. In an age when bedrooms were often unheated, the head became a battleground for comfort. Nightcaps were thought to retain the vapor of thought, whatever that means, and were lined in flannel or even fur. Some had bells. Others, tragic little pom-poms. Still others were passed down like heirlooms. One aristocrat claimed it had been worn by 6 generations of lightly insomniac viscounts. You, now standing in the threshold of the study, watch as a gentleman removes his slippers and exchanges his robe for yet another, slightly softer version. It's bedtime. Again, though it's unclear whether this will involve any sleeping. He kneels briefly, not to pray, but to adjust a heating pan tucked under mattress. Then, as he climbs beneath a positively excessive number of sheets, you hear the tiniest sigh of satisfaction. There is ritual here. There is rhythm. And there is something deeply funny about how much effort is required to pretend that none of this is effortful. As the gaslight dims and the gentleman finally settles into something approximating rest, you reflect on what you've seen. Clothes meant not to be seen. Schedules based on not needing a schedule. Entire fabrics invented for the purpose of being crumpled in sleep. And perhaps, just perhaps, your own pajamas suddenly feel underwhelming. The gaslight flickers low, and the gentleman seems to be drifting at last. But don't get too cozy. He won't be asleep for long. Because Victorian slumber didn't just happen once per night. It came in fragments, often sandwiched between inexplicably scheduled activities. And now, as the clock approaches 11:30 p.m., it's time for his supper. Yes, supper, not dinner. That already happened, sort of, during the early evening. But many Victorian gentlemen reserved their most indulgent meals for late into the night, long after others had curled under quilts and called it a day. You creep down the stairs and find the dining room lit once again. The heavy curtains remain shut tight. Of course, it's as if sunlight itself has been exiled from the premises. The table is set with quiet grandeur. Fine china, a modest roast, a bowl of pickled walnuts, and, if he's feeling ambitious, oysters. This is not a snack. This is a slow, meticulous, wine-accompanied experience. Your host settles in, still wrapped in a nightgown, and eats with the slow precision of someone who has nowhere else to be, and hasn't for years. Why such late dining? Historians still argue whether it was a class performance, the luxury of choosing your meal times, or linked to long-standing traditions of second sleep. In pre-industrial times, many people practiced segmented sleep. A first sleep after dusk, then waking around midnight for an hour or two before drifting into a second phase. For some Victorians, this model lingered, though now it came with mutton. You sit in silence, the silverware tapping gently on porcelain. Outside, the London fog presses against the window panes like a curious ghost. The room feels timeless. The gentleman dabs his mouth with a napkin the size of a picnic blanket. Then he pours a second glass of claret and reads aloud, quietly, to himself. It's a guide to agricultural reform. You try not to take it personally. This whole meal could last over an hour, and it's just one part of his nocturnal loop. It's here that the Victorian gentleman comes most alive, somewhere between roast beef and philosophical musing. Diaries of the era record these odd mealtime habits in great detail. One barrister in 1887 claimed he did his finest thinking between midnight and 2 a.m. while nibbling cold pigeon pie. Another aristocrat, widowed and lonely, invited himself to his own late suppers with the kind of melancholy flair you could bottle and sell in a poetry shop. Of course, this midnight dining required a delicate dance with the kitchen staff. Meals had to be pre-prepared, reheated with care, and served without fanfare. Cooks learned to organize quiet trays, which could be left just outside the gentleman's study or brought to the drawing room with a knock so soft it barely registered in the human ear. And it wasn't just food. There were drinks, too. Medicinal cordials, night tonics, and something politely called sleep drafts. These concoctions often included a disturbing blend of alcohol, herbs, and light narcotics. One such drink, recommended in a popular health guide, contained port wine mixed with valerian root and just a touch of opium. A gentle nightcap, if you will. Another favorite, milk punch, which involved warm milk, nutmeg, rum, and the self-assurance that this wouldn't come back to haunt you at 3 a.m. But here's where it gets stranger. Some gentlemen kept journals specifically for their post-supper reflections. These weren't business notes or drafts of novels. They were dream prequels. Pages written while the body was still warm from roast fowl, and the mind was beginning to swim gently into sleep's waiting arms. Tonight, I feel the moon pressing on my temples, one wrote. I believe I shall dream of giraffes again. Yes, giraffes. Again. You glance at your host. His plate is now clean, his posture slacked. He sips the final ounce of his cordial and closes the agricultural journal with a sigh of epic proportions, as though the fate of wheat itself now rests in his subconscious. He rises gracefully, if a bit wobbly, and disappears into the hallway. You follow, of course, through the dim halls, past the grandfather clock ticking with judgmental precision. The night is far from over. In fact, this next bit is what many gentlemen would consider their actual bedtime. It's around 1:30 a.m. now. Just enough time for one last read. Back in the bedroom, if you can call it that, since it looks more like a small museum of blankets. The gentleman selects a book from the shelf. Something dense. Roman history, perhaps, or a botanical catalog. Or, if he's feeling rebellious, poetry translated from Sanskrit. He reads slowly, aloud just enough to hear the shape of the words. This ritual isn't for comprehension. It's a sedative. Mainstream historical accounts confirm that reading before bed was one of the few habits consistent across class lines during the Victorian era. But gentlemen took it to absurd lengths. Some timed their reading with sandglasses. Others annotated their books with marks indicating at what stage of sleepiness each passage should be read. Page 54, one wrote, from mild yawning. Page 72, the brink. Not all reading was practical. One man kept a log of the dullest passages he could find, purely for their narcotic effect. A 6-page treatise on tulip bulb measurements once sent him into a deep sleep for 10 hours. He framed it. Historians still debate whether this obsession with nighttime reading was born from sincere literary engagement, or if it was simply the only socially acceptable way for a man to hold a stuffed toy and not get mocked. You turn back to the bed. The gentleman has finally returned to it. He lies not sprawled but placed, carefully as a bookmark in the night. 2 pillows, 1 blanket, 1 warming pan, now cooling at the foot. He closes his eyes. And then, with the same solemnity that a priest reserves for benedictions, he whispers, let the brain wander where it will. And with that, he sleeps. Kind of. You're not quite sure how long it's been. Maybe 20 minutes, maybe 2 hours. The room is still. The house is quiet. You're beginning to feel the heaviness of sleep yourself when, clunk, a noise, somewhere near the bed. The gentleman stirs. You freeze. He's not waking. Not exactly. He's moving, upright now, but not alert. His eyes remain closed. His feet shuffle onto the carpet with the delicacy of someone trying not to wake himself. You, sleepy observer, are now witnessing one of the oddest quirks of Victorian nightlife, the midnight wander. Yes, Victorian gentlemen didn't always stay tucked in after their post-supper slumbers. Sleepwalking or nocturnal ambulation was a known phenomenon, treated alternately as a medical mystery and a spiritual gift. In some households, it was even seen as a sign of intellectual vigor, because of course, even your unconscious habits had to be a little pretentious. And while today's sleepwalkers might just end up in the kitchen, Victorian gentlemen roamed strangely. Take the Earl of X, who, in 1871, was discovered writing letters in his sleep. Full ink, careful handwriting. Only to wake up with no memory and a pen cap tucked into his mustache. Or the case of the Oxford professor who took to dream reading, mumbling entire passages of Aristotle, while drifting from room to room with a candle in one hand and a pair of spectacles in the other, upside down. Tonight, your host glides toward the window, still heavily draped, muttering something about unexamined taxonomies. He pauses near a set of shelves, rearranges 3 books by height, not by title, and shuffles on. You follow, barefoot, keeping your own breathing quiet so as not to interrupt this dream ballet. This might sound like fringe behavior, but here's the mainstream fact. Victorian medicine took sleepwalking quite seriously. Medical journals of the time often included elaborate case studies of men who built model railways in their sleep, who debated politics while dozing, and in one curious case, who completed a full evening of accounting without waking once. He even balanced the books. Scholars of the time couldn't agree on what caused it. Nervous excess, one doctor suggested. Incomplete digestion, said another. The more spiritual circles suggested it was the soul temporarily freed to roam. Some even believe it was a form of divine inspiration, dreaming with legs. One fringe pamphlet, Somnus, the nocturnal philosopher, proposed that sleepwalkers were the next step in human evolution. These were men who had mastered the art of doing even less while appearing productive. Sounds like some managers you've known. Naturally, not every gentleman appreciated these midnight exhibitions. Sleepwalking came with risks. Falls, burns, impolite midnight urination into ornamental vases. As a result, bedrooms were often designed with precautions. Chairs turned sideways to trip the foot. Rugs folded slightly to create a toe-stub barrier. In one extraordinary household, the master slept inside a velvet-walled nook with a discreet chain curtain that would jingle if disturbed, like a very polite alarm system. And then there's the question of chamber pots. Yes, we've arrived at the part of Victorian sleep few want to picture but cannot avoid. Indoor plumbing was still spotty across much of England, and even the wealthiest homes relied on chamber pots for nighttime relief. These pots, decorated, porcelain, occasionally gilded, were placed on the bed or in nearby cabinets called commodes. It was a valet's job to clean them, a job which, frankly, deserves hazard pay and a statue. Gentlemen were expected to use these discreetly, the key word being expected. But in reality, many wandered groggily through their rooms, sometimes relieving themselves wherever the urge struck, especially if sleepwalking. One noted naturalist reportedly mistook a hat stand for a urinal. The hat never recovered. You tiptoe behind your host as he approaches his cabinet. Thankfully, this time he's lucid enough to manage the chamber pot without error. He fumbles slightly with the lid, yawns once in a tone-deaf baritone, and then proceeds with a sort of routine you will politely pretend not to have seen. Moments later, he stumbles back to bed, not gracefully, not with the earlier elegance, but like a man who's halfway between a dream and a rug. But the house isn't still yet. Somewhere down the hall, another door creaks. The staff, servants were often required to remain semi-awake through the night, not just in case of fires or emergencies, but to assist their employers with their elaborate, unpredictable night needs. Water had to be kept at the right temperature, blankets fetched, candles relit. One butler in 1864 recorded being called 6 times between midnight and dawn, twice to just curtain folds, once to warm slippers, and once to chase perceived ghosts, which turn out to be a dressing gown hung too creatively. You crouch behind a parlor door as a servant glides past with a covered tray. Possibly more tea, possibly just warm milk, a sleepy offering, an insurance policy against yet another sleepless hour. The staff aren't angry. They're simply exhausted and trained to hide it behind perfect posture and quiet feet. Historians still debate whether the sleepwalking and late-night rituals of Victorian men were born of actual restlessness or carefully constructed drama. Was it biology or the burden of appearing always important, even in unconsciousness? Regardless, the result was a fractured kind of night, one not defined by peaceful rest, but by performance, interruption, and the oddity of wandering half-dressed through hallways lined with taxidermy and oil portraits that seem to follow you. Your host has returned to bed now. Again. This time he clutches a small leather-bound notebook, his dream diary. He'll try to record whatever fragments survive the next unconscious swirl of thoughts, snacks, and soft panic about taxes. You settle back into the corner, wrapped in shadows. The house groans gently with age. Another candle gutters. The pot is back on the bed, restored like a terrible relic. Everything is quiet again. For now. You're still lying there in your mind, warm, tucked between the flickers of fire and the cool breath of the night, when another shift ripples through the camp. Not noise, not motion, just a subtle turning of the air. And then, in the shadows near the cave's opening, a shape moves. It's one of the ones who left earlier, the young man with the bone charm. He returns slowly, not sneaking, but reverent, like he's stepping between two worlds. His robe, or rather, his stitched hide garment, is damp at the edges. His breath is visible, which surprises you. Somehow the night has cooled more than you realized. The cave holds heat like memory, but outside, the wind has sharp teeth. He places something carefully on a stone near the fire, a bundle of moss and bark, perhaps gathered from the forest beyond. It's not food, it's not kindling. It's the message, or maybe an offering. The difference isn't entirely clear. You wonder what happened out there, what he saw or felt or said to the dark. Was there a vision, a moment of clarity under starlight, or just a long walk and the aching of growing up? Historians still argue whether these solitary night wanderings were purely practical, scouting, foraging, relieving oneself, or part of a structured rite. Some point to comparative studies among modern forager groups, night vigils for guidance, dream hunting, or simply proving one's bravery. But back in this cave, the young man doesn't speak. He lies down wordlessly. No one asks him what he saw. It's understood that some experiences are too fresh for words, or maybe too sacred. You take note of the cave's silence now, deeper and more deliberate. The fire is truly low. Only embers now, red and pulsing like the last notes of a drumbeat. Everyone is asleep, or very close, except for one tiny sound. A scrape, soft and rhythmic. You locate it. It's a woman near the wall, slowly grinding something between two stones. Not loudly, not urgently, just steady, like she's keeping time with her hands. She doesn't look like she's trying to stay awake. More like her body hasn't gotten the message that it's bedtime. You edge closer and peek. It's dried roots. She grinds, pauses, pinches, tastes, then nods faintly, as if confirming a recipe with no words. Later, this mixture might be used for medicine, or added to the next day's stew. But tonight, it's something else. A comfort task. A way of helping her mind prepare for sleep. By doing what it knows. Anthropologists have noted similar behaviors in many tribal groups. Small rituals of motion to coax the body into slowing down. Shell sorting. Not tying. Hair braiding. Acts that aren't strictly necessary at night, but quietly sacred. And now a breeze. A cool hush rushes into the cave's entrance, making the embers shiver. One child pulls a fur tighter over her shoulders. A man rolls to his side and sighs. The night outside has deepened to full black now. No more blue, no silver light. Just darkness. Thick velvet, star-punched. You step outside for a moment, just to see. The camp is silent. The trees are tall and still. A few faint animal sounds echo in the distance, but they feel far away, held at bay by the scent of smoke and the presence of human breath. Above you, stars. So many that your mind struggles to organize them. Constellations here aren't tidy like in textbooks. They sprawl, overlap, hum with stories too big to write down. And they're a new motion. Near a tree, faint as fog, another returner. This one older. She carries a bundle of reeds and something round. Perhaps fruit or dry gourd. She stops outside the cave and looks up, not at you, at the sky. She whispers something. You don't catch the words. You don't need to. It's not a prayer, not exactly. More like a call, or a thank you, or maybe just a habit. So Old no longer needs explanation. Then she steps inside and melts into the dark. You stay a moment longer. Let the cool air rest on your cheeks. Feel the ancient night press gently against your chest. Sleep, for these people, is not a line you cross. It's a slope, a gentle descent. And at every point along that slope, something meaningful happens. A bone charm is laid down. A root is ground. A whisper is offered to the sky. You return inside. Lay back. Listen. A breath. A shift. A sigh. The cave holds them all. And now, maybe it holds you too. You're still lying beneath that for covering, listening to the soft breath of sleepers and the occasional pop of a recalcitrant ember. Around you, the cave seems to exhale. It's the deepest part of the night now. That strange, suspended hour when time feels like it's hovering on its tiptoes, hesitant to pass too loudly. That's when you notice it. A low hum. Not from the wind. Not from the fire. This comes from within. A voice. Then another. It starts soft, almost accidental. A man's voice, older, husky. He isn't singing, exactly. He's remembering. Chanting something with the rhythm of memory, not performance. The melody isn't catchy. It wanders, doubling back on itself, sometimes cracking in places as though unsure if it wants to be heard. Then a woman joins in, not harmonizing, just adding her own thread. No one conducts. No one instructs. It just builds. This is one of the tribe's oral threads, a way of anchoring stories in sleep. Historians still argue whether these late-night chantings were for spiritual comfort, passive memory keeping, or simply the equivalent of humming yourself to sleep when the stars feel too big. But it works. The rhythm begins to wrap itself around the room. Not every voice joins in. Some just listen. Others mumble along. You recognize a few repeated words, maybe names, a river, a great animal, a warning, a joke. The tone shifts, becoming gentler, almost amused. You suspected a favorite story now, maybe one told by a grandfather too many times, but still worth retelling. That's when you notice the children. One by one, they start to drift closer, not for warmth, but for proximity to the voices. A small boy nestles between two adults, his thumb barely brushing someone's knee. A girl leans her head on a bundle of skins. No one shushes them. No one tucks them in. But the rhythm does the job. The chant morphs again. Now it sounds more like a lullaby. The cave has a natural echo to it, giving every syllable a sort of ancient reverb. You wonder what these songs would sound like in daylight. Less magical, probably. There's something about nighttime that turns even the clumsiest tune into a spell. Suddenly, the voices drop off. No warning, just quiet, like they finished a sentence and knew the next didn't need saying. That's when you hear the baby. You hadn't noticed her earlier, but there she is, cradled in the curve of a young woman's body. The woman isn't awake, not fully, but her arm moves gently in her sleep, patting, swaying, soothing. The baby coos, a hiccup of contentment. In many early human communities, babies slept in the center of sleeping circles, guarded by adult warmth. It wasn't just for protection, it was practical. A midnight cough could mean a chill, and a chill could mean death. Here, warmth was wealth. And yet, nothing here feels desperate. Everything feels intentional. The cave isn't just shelter. It's a container, a shared breath, a body almost. You shift slightly and catch the faint scent of herbs. Burnt sage, perhaps. Not strong. Just a wisp, lingering from an earlier burning. Scent, in these early tribes, wasn't just for cooking. It marked transitions. Fire wasn't only for heat. It was a tool for clearing space, both physical and mental. Burning certain plants was a way to reset the air. Anthropologists point out that many early human cultures burned sage, juniper, or other resinous plants not just for aroma, but for ritual purification. Others say it was a practical bug repellent. Historians still debate which came first, the need for insects to leave or bad dreams. You glance over at the woman who'd been grinding roots earlier. She's asleep now. Her hands still rest on the stone. The unfinished mixture beside her is untouched. Whatever its purpose, it can wait. The night has chosen stillness. One man shifts and mutters something. He's dreaming. You can't tell if it's a good dream or a troubled one, but no one stirs to soothe him. Not yet. In early human belief systems, dreams were often treated like visitations, messages, warnings, invitations from the world behind the world. Some groups even had dream interpreters, usually elders, who would listen in the morning and try to tease meaning from a haze. You wonder what this man will say when he wakes, or whether he'll say anything at all. The fire flutters, low and slow. A tiny spark hops upward, then dies in the dark. You're not cold. The cave holds its warmth like a protective thought. You shift slightly, feeling the fur's weight adjust across your shoulders. A snore, light and almost musical, emerges from the far side of the room. It's answered by a soft chuckle. Someone else is still half awake, finding humor in it. Then silence returns. But not emptiness. This silence is earned. It's full of everything that came before. The voice, the chant, the soft rustle of children pulling closer. It's the kind of quiet that holds you gently, like the night itself is wrapping an arm around your back. You breathe in, and let the darkness settle around you like a lullaby made of ash and stars. It's still dark, but something has shifted. Not the fire, though its glow is dimmed to a lazy orange, curling in on itself like a sleepy cat. Not the people. Most of them are deep in the kind of sleep that doesn't involve movement, only murmured breath and occasional unconscious twitch. But the air has changed. You can feel it. Cooler, maybe, or heavier. A signal, almost, and sure enough, before you can puzzle it out, someone stirs. A figure near the entrance of the cave uncurls, rising not with haste, but with purpose. This isn't the fumble of waking for water or stretching out a cramp. This is intention. You squint, try not to seem awake yourself, and see it's an older man. His limbs are wiry, but his steps are practiced. He knows exactly where he's going. He picks up something. No, not a weapon, not quite. A staff? A carved stick. Decorative, faintly ceremonial. Then he retrieves a pouch from the wall niche, slung from a sinew cord. The motions are silent, reverent, like he's been doing the same thing for years. This, you realize, is the night watcher. Many early tribes had them. Night wasn't considered dead time. It was a cycle with responsibilities. Someone had to watch the fire. Yes, but also the people, the spirits, the dreams. Was he a shaman? A chief? Maybe neither. Roles didn't come with business cards in those days. Historians still debate how structured these night duties were. Was it a rotating chore? An honored post? A self-assigned burden? Regardless, it happened. In almost every culture, someone stayed up to make sure morning still came. You watch him as he moves toward the cave's mouth. He doesn't leave, just sits, his back to the inside, his eyes on the world beyond. The night out there is vast. The stars have rearranged themselves. You imagine what he sees. Silhouettes of trees, the distant yelp of some hunting animal, the moon tangled behind a drifting cloud. But it's not fear that keeps him there. It's witnessing, participation, a belief that the world keeps spinning more smoothly when someone is paying attention. Inside, the others sleep on. Even the baby is silent now, swaddled in communal warmth. But the man stays upright, resting on his heels, occasionally adjusting the fire with a curved stick so softly you barely hear the crackle. There's a small bowl beside him, and every now and then he sprinkles something into the embers. Herbs again, or crushed bone, something symbolic. You catch the faintest scent, pine, maybe sage. Whatever it is, it lifts on the smoke like a message. One anthropologist described it as smoke talk, an offering to spirits, ancestors, or simply to the dark itself. Some early tribes believed the night was filled with listening beings. You didn't speak to them directly. You burned your thoughts and let the smoke carry them. The man doesn't chant, but he hums, quietly, a different sound than earlier. This one has no story, just tone. A single, vibrating note that makes your bones buzz in sympathy. Maybe it's meant to lull. Maybe it's a kind of tuning fork for the soul. You shift again, just a little. You don't want to break the spell. But even your tiny motion sends a puff of her into the air. The man notices. He glances back. Not startled, just acknowledging. Your eyes meet for a second. Then he nods. That's all. Just a slow, serene nod, as if to say, I see you. It's all right. Go back to dreaming. And you do, almost instantly. The moment holds you like a cupped hand. You blink once, twice, then everything goes syrupy and soft. Later, maybe an hour, maybe 5, you wake again. The cave has brightened slightly. A pale bluish glow brushes the rock ceiling. Not full morning yet, but it's coming, that peculiar pre-dawn light, when everything seems half-dreamed. The night watcher is gone. His place near the mouth is now just a dent in the dust. The bowl has been emptied. The fire stirred once more back into life. There's a different figure now, someone younger, perched near the flames, adding small twigs with deliberate care. Another watcher, a handover, or just someone restless, caught between sleep cycles? Historians suggest that prehistoric sleep wasn't a single block. There's growing evidence humans once slept in 2 parts, first sleep and second sleep, with a quiet wakeful period in between. People might have talked softly, stoked the fire, even shared dreams or whispered worries. It wasn't insomnia. It was built in. You noticed 2 people murmuring to each other in the far corner. Not loudly, just enough to exchange a few ideas. You can't make out the words, but the tone is warm, familiar, like people returning to each other after wandering different dream worlds. And that's when it hits you. The night was never meant to be silent. Still, yes, but not dead. It breathes. It pulses. It contains things that day can't carry. You lie back and let that thought settle on your chest like an extra blanket. Around you, the cave is shifting gears again, gearing down from dark, up toward dawn, but gently, slowly, like the tribe has learned something most of us have forgotten, that sleep is a landscape, and night is a ritual. You're not fully awake, not fully asleep, just floating somewhere between. Around you, there's movement now, not the bustling kind, not yet, just rustlings. A quiet breath of momentum passing through the sleeping forms like a breeze under fur blankets. Someone yawns. Someone shifts. Someone sneezes so softly it could be mistaken for the sigh of the wind slipping through a cave crack. And then comes a sound that wakes even the groggiest. The scrape of stone on stone. You lift your head, blinking at the pale cave light. The fire's been restoked, now glowing with a renewed confidence. And crouched near it, backlit by a soft orange halo, is an elder, older than the night watcher, her hair a cloud of pale wiry tufts. She's grinding something in a shallow bowl of rounded rock, moving with the slow assurance of someone who has done this every morning of her life. It's not breakfast. Not yet. This is something older, more sacred. A powder, maybe crushed bark or flour, or ash. She sprinkles into the fire with practiced flick, and the smoke coils upwards in tighter spirals than before. You catch a hint of bitter root, maybe something sharp and peppery. It tickles your nose. This is the morning offering. Many early human tribes began their day with a ritual. Not because they were particularly spiritual, though many were, but because rituals provided rhythm. In a world without clocks, rituals were time. When the grinding began, you knew the day had started. When the smoke shifted color, you rose. You sit up slowly, feeling your joints protest like mossy hinges. The stone beneath your woven mat has left impressions on your skin. You brush them away and watch as others begin to stir too. No alarm bell, no barking dog. Just a shared understanding that the offering is done, and now you may move. One by one, figures unfold like ancient paper dolls. Children blink and clutch at whatever soft thing they fell asleep with. Young men stretch their arms overhead, shoulders popping like green branches. A woman retrieves a leather pouch from a shelf carved into the wall, passing it carefully to the elder by the fire. Inside, dried leaves, possibly tobacco, though that wouldn't arrive for millennia. More likely something local, mugwort, or yarrow, used for cleansing or dream recall. The elder sprinkles a pinch onto the embers, and the fire responds with a sharp crack, then a fragrant puff. Historians still argue whether these pre-dawn rituals were religious in the way we understand religion, or simply expressions of awe, a moment to acknowledge the sky hadn't fallen, and the world had returned for another round. You rub your eyes and glance toward the cave's mouth. It's growing lighter out there. The stars are gone, replaced by a faint wash of pale yellow and blue, like a half-clean fresco on a chapel ceiling. Somewhere out in the trees, a bird begins shouting its own opinion on the matter. More movement now. Someone has fetched a bundle of kindling from a dry corner. Another tends to a small pile of cracked eggshells, gathered not for eating, but for grinding calcium, perhaps, or paint base. In this early hour, before tasks divide the group, there is shared labor. You're handed a vessel, smooth, cool, carved from stone or hardened clay, stained from use. Inside, a thin broth, probably made from roots, maybe bones. It smells earthy and strong. You sip carefully. It's not delicious, but it's warm, and warmth in this chill is a gift. Beside you, two boys are poking the fire with long twigs, trying to herd a stubborn ember back into line. Their laughter is quiet, stifled, but real. Behind them, a woman is braiding her hair with deft fingers, weaving in what looks like feathers. The feathers are not ornamental. They might be part of a role, a signal, a story told silently with strands of black and brown and crow. You glance at the walls now, clearer in the morning light. Smudges, marks, symbols. Not art. Exactly. At least not in the decorative sense. These are records. Memories. A line of dots beside a painted handprint. A series of wavy lines. A four-legged creature with improbably square feet. Were they counting? Mapping? Dreaming onto stone? One theory claims early humans began marking their caves as mnemonic devices, as memory maps for stories only told in winter. Others suggest it was dream recording. Still others say it was the children, bored out of their minds during long nights. All could be true. Someone begins to hum again. Not the night watcher this time. This is a higher sound, more melodic. A young woman brushing ash from a round stone. The sound carries gently, looping between the walls until it seems to hover like the morning smoke. It's not a song with words, just melody, early music. Music that doesn't know it's music yet. And still, it lifts the cave from silent to sacred. You shift again, this time reaching for a folded skin nearby. It's been offered. You take it with a nod and drape it over your shoulders. It still smells faintly of the animal it once was. Warm, though heavy in a good way. As people begin to stir more confidently now, standing, stretching, murmuring, you realize the ritual isn't ending. It's just changing shape. The hush of night becomes the hush of morning. A respectful pause before the work of the day. Gathering, hunting, weaving, teaching. It's all ahead, but not yet. One last thing happens before the day truly begins. The youngest child, still wrapped in a fur bundle, is brought forward by their parent. Together, they place a stone, just a small one, beside the fire. No one comments. No one claps. But many watch. It's symbolic, clearly, a lesson in participation. A whisper that says, "You too are part of this tribe." And you smile, because somehow, without realizing it, you've become part of it too. The cave smells of ash and moss now, thick with that dusky morning blend of fire smoke and damp earth. You step outside, careful not to disturb the woven mats or the scattered shells near the entrance. It's cooler than expected. Early spring, maybe, with a gentle mist clinging low to ground like a shy animal. The trees wear a thin sheen of dew, and every leaf looks brushed with silver. You're not alone. Others have already emerged. A pair of women gather herbs just beyond the threshold, hunched over like they're whispering secrets to the ground. A boy chases a stick with conviction of a warrior, while an older man sits quietly, turning something in his hands. Maybe a tool, maybe a memory. But what draws your attention is the line of footprints. Still fresh, leading toward the edge of the glade. Long, deliberate strides. Barefoot, you follow. They're down a slight slope of trampled grass. Is a circle, not of stones, not of fire, but of people gathered silently, facing inward, as if listening to something the wind just said. You take a place on the edge, careful not to draw attention, though no one looks at you. All eyes are focused inward. And then movement. A woman steps forward from the cluster, tall, wiry, draped in a cloak made of stitched hides and what looks like crow feathers along the shoulders. Her hair is tightly bound, streaked with pale ash, and her face is lined, not with age necessarily, but with repetition. This is someone who has done this many times. She holds a bundle. It's hard to tell what's inside. Bones, maybe, or carved wooden figures. Or knotted cloth. Slowly, she raises it to her lips and begins to hum. Not the soft, playful tune of earlier. This is deeper, breathier, like wind moving through hollow reeds. This is the dawn invocation. Many early tribes are believed to have greeted the sun, not as a god necessarily, but as a returning companion. After all, in a world ruled by fire and fear, the sun's reappearance each morning must have felt like a minor miracle. You made it. You're still here. So is the light. The woman's voice is joined by another, then another, a harmony not perfect but powerful. You can feel it in your chest more than you can hear it. There's no dancing, no drums, just standing, listening, breathing. Some anthropologists suggest these early dawn gatherings serve both spiritual and social functions. They mark the start of communal work. They reinforce group identity. And maybe, just maybe, they helped shake off the cold terror of night, where wild things lurked in firelight felt fragile. Now someone moves through the circle, scattering something into the air. You catch a glimpse: dried leaves, petals, crushed bark. It flutters like dark snow, settling into the grass. Another offers water in a carved horn, pouring a few drops onto the ground with a muttered phrase. You don't need to know the words to understand the meaning. Thanks. Always thanks. There's a rhythm to the way they shift, kneel, rise again. One figure claps their hands slowly, once, twice. The sound echoes like thunder in the quiet. A child giggles. The spell breaks for a heartbeat, and that's okay. Rituals, even sacred ones, allow for human cracks. And then, just as gently as it began, the circle unravels. People begin to move again. Some head toward the creek, that glints just beyond the trees. Others fetch tools, stone blades, woven baskets, digging sticks. The day is beginning. Not loudly, but intentionally. You follow a trio headed toward the forest. One carries a net strung with bone beads. Another has a pouch slung low, bulging with who knows what. A third hums under her breath. The same melody from before, now quieter, half remembered. Their walk is slow, not lazy, but present. You mimic their pace. Step, pause, look. This was morning in early human life. Not alarms and cereal boxes, but sky and ceremony. You didn't start the day at a specific time. You began it with one another. There's a serenity to it, a dignity. Even in the hunger and hardship, there's something deliberate here. You find yourself wondering, what would it feel like to start every day with gratitude instead of urgency? You pass a tree that's been marked, scraped near the base, symbols scratched in with sharp stones. A kind of totem, a trail marker, maybe a memory pinned in bark. No one stops to explain it. They don't need to. The meaning is not in the carving. It's in the doing. Soon the group splits. Two head off toward a grove. Another pair veer toward the creek. You're with a woman now, mid-30s, maybe, though time doesn't mark faces here like it does in cities. Her hands are calloused, her gaze sharp. She stops near a patch of ground disturbed by animal prints. She kneels, touches the earth, then tilts her head at you. It's a question. You kneel beside her, mirroring her gesture. The prints are fresh. Boar? Deer? You can't tell, but she seems to know. She taps a line of them with one finger. then gestures toward a bush, a trail, a story written in mud. Historians still debate how early humans developed tracking skills. Was it innate, taught, ritualized? Some theories suggest storytelling helped. Every set of prints became a tale. Here, the animal hesitated. Here it turned. Here it was startled by sound. Over time, that story became survival. You rise with her. No kill today. Just understanding. Just presence. As the sun finally peaks over the treetops, spilling gold across the clearing, you realize something. The rituals of early morning weren't about gods or glory. They were about attention. To one another. To the land. To the strange miracle of having another day. And isn't that what you're here for too? The light has fully arrived now, though it still filters softly through the canopy like a blessing. Sunbeams catch on damp leaves and glint off tiny puddles, remnants of last night's storm. The forest around you is stirring with a low murmur of birds, the occasional snap of twigs, and the distant sound of laughter, gentle, unhurried. The sound of people who aren't afraid of silence in between. You're walking back toward the camp now, following a winding trail barely marked by footfall. The woman beside you, your guide in this early world, picks up a fallen feather and tucks it behind her ear without a word. A gesture so simple and deliberate, it feels ceremonial. Back at the encampment, more people are awake. Some crouch around the fire pit, poking the coals into life. Others have returned from their own early ventures, carrying bundles of wood, bark, mushrooms, or knotted herbs. It's not chaotic. There's an almost choreographed flow to the way people move, as if the entire camp has agreed, without saying a word, to begin the day with rhythm. Near one tent made of stretched hides and woven reeds, a man is carving something with intense concentration. From where you stand, it looks like bone, maybe a tool handle or a pendant. His brow furrows in that universal look of craft, and you catch a glimpse of what might be ochre pigment beside him. Decorative? Symbolic? Historians still argue whether early humans carved images purely for function or for ritual, and whether the two were ever really separate. You drift toward the hearth area where a low smoldering fire has been coaxed back into life. Smoke curls lazily upward, and someone fans it with a bundle of dry reeds, releasing a pleasant herby scent. You crouch nearby. A flat stone slab lies beside the fire, and a few root vegetables, something like wild carrots, are slowly being roasted. Someone passes you around a bark cup of warm liquid. It's bitter, possibly medicinal, definitely not oat milk. Here's where the rituals of nourishment begin. For many early human tribes, breakfast didn't resemble a meal so much as a transition, a shared act that confirmed, we made it through the night. You take another sip. It's earthy, smoky, and not at all enjoyable, but there's a kind of gratitude in every swallow. Nearby, two children are being gently scolded by an older woman with feathers woven through her braids. One child had apparently run off with the coal, intending to start their own miniature fire in a pile of leaves. You stifle a chuckle. The woman's expression is serious, but her gestures betray affection. She dabs ash on their forehead, a warning maybe, or a symbolic act of patience. The child pouts. The fire survives. Across the clearing, another kind of morning ritual begins. Storytelling. A group is gathered, young ones mostly, but a few older members as well, around an elder wrapped in furs. She doesn't speak at first. Instead, she arranges a few stones, a feather, and 2 bones in the dirt. The children lean in. Then she begins. No big gestures. No costumes. Just a low, lilting voice and slow movements. The story, as far as you can tell, involves a trickster animal who steals fire from a mountain and brings it down in his tail. There's laughter, gasps, and a few exaggerated sighs. No one questions the logic of the tale. That's not the point. Anthropologists believe stories like these serve many purposes. Teaching, entertaining, instilling shared memory. But they also may have reinforced morning rituals. Retelling stories at dawn was a way to remind the tribe who they were, what they had survived, what they believed. Even if that belief involved a crow with a flaming tail. You shift slightly on the packed earth and notice your fingers have picked up bits of soot and red clay. Somehow, this place makes you notice everything. Your breath, your weight, The tiny rustle of someone adjusting their sitting position behind you. It's not anxiety. It's presence. The sun now arcs above the treetops, and the camp is in full motion. Yet there's still no shouting, no barking orders. Tasks appear to emerge organically. Two people begin weaving something, a net perhaps, or a storage bag. Another sharpens a tool, humming tunelessly. A child carries a bundle of reeds twice their height with staggering determination. Everyone seems to know what needs doing, as if by instinct. And then you hear it again, drumming, not the loud, thundering kind. This is gentler, a slow, steady rhythm tap on a hollow log near the edge of camp. You follow the sound and find a few people seated cross-legged around it, taking turns. One taps with a stick, another with her palm. A third joins in with a dry rattle made from a gourd and pebbles. Is it a morning song? A signal? An offering? Historians still debate the role of music in early daily life. Was it just for ceremony? For leisure? Or perhaps part of the practical toolkit? Syncing movement, coordinating hunts, or helping memories stick. Some even suggest rhythm was an early language of the body, speaking across barriers of dialect or distance. You sit down, adding your own tap to the rhythm, and no one objects. The pattern welcomes you, an invitation to be part of the tribe, if only for this hour. And then, as suddenly as it began, the drumming ends. The group disperses like smoke. You stand, stretching. The day awaits. But you can't shake the sense that you've been part of something very old. Not just a camp, not just a story. A pattern. One that echoes forward through time. Into the rituals you still keep, the coffee mugs and playlists and morning walks. Maybe not so different, really. You glance at the sun. It's just past mid-morning. Time, here, is a feeling, not a number. So you breathe deep, brush the clay from your knees, and follow the others into the forest. The forest greets you once more with dappled light and the hushed chatter of life. But now, it's a different kind of journey. Neither purely gathering nor purely aimless. It's more like a quiet procession. You and a small group have broken off from the main camp, each person carrying something. Bundles of herbs, carved tokens, a bowl of ash, even what appears to be a piece of charwood wrapped in leather. No one explains. No one needs to. You walk for some time, past a clearing where deer tracks cross a shallow stream, under a canopy heavy with vine and moss. And then, slowly, the group halts. There's no marked path, no obvious destination, yet somehow, everyone knows you've arrived. It's a glade, round, quiet, cut by trees that lean slightly inward as if listening. The earth here is soft and dark, the ground thick with fallen needles and damp loam. There's a stillness to this place. Sacred, maybe, or just old. Places like this have gravity. They pull the tribe toward them without force. One person steps forward and clears a space in the center, brushing away leaves and debris with deliberate strokes. Another produces a flint blade and carefully arranges the items everyone has brought. There's no grand fire, no drums, just gestures, purposeful, practiced, silent. This is not a burial. No one has died as far as you can tell, but it is still a kind of farewell. Early human tribes often marked endings and transitions not with weeping but with ritual, a way of saying goodbye to a hunt, a storm, a season, even a dream. Historians still argue whether these ceremonies were religious, symbolic, or simply social. But the emotional texture is undeniable. You feel it in the hush, in the way even birds seem reluctant to interrupt. The charred wood is placed on the earth. The bowl of ash is sprinkled over it in a slow arc. A sprig of something bitter smelling, perhaps sage or wild mint, is burned, sending up a thread of smoke that curls lazily toward the sky. There is no speaking. Yet, somehow, everything is being said. You sit with them for a while, legs crossed, hands resting on your thighs. The moss is cool beneath you. The wind combs through the trees with a hush-like breath. You close your eyes. When they rise, so do you? The sight is left just as it was, untouched, save for a slightly flattened patch of earth and a faint scent of smoke that lingers like a memory. As you return to the camp, the sun has shifted. Shadows now point eastward. The rhythm of the day changes. Afternoon is coming, and with it, a different kind of stillness. The time for big motions is ending. What lies ahead is slower and more reflective. You pass a few younger members sitting in a circle, each one whittling or braiding something, cord perhaps, or strands of bark. Their work is quiet but focused. No one rushes. And then you notice something curious. Someone painting, not on a wall, not on bark, on their own skin. The pigment is reddish, smeared from a small bowl with a stick. It's not elaborate, just a few shapes, lines, smudges along the arm. But it's done with care, as if it matters deeply how each mark is placed. Other members begin to join in, painting symbols on each other's shoulders, backs, even foreheads. Some are simple, dots or spirals. Others look like animals or flames, or things you can't quite name. This isn't battle paint. It's not about intimidation. It feels more like a signature, each person reasserting who they are in the midst of the tribe's larger rhythm. Anthropologists suggest body marking in early tribes served multiple roles: identification, protection, aesthetic display, even medicine. One theory suggests that red ochre on the skin helped repel insects, or more whimsically, bad spirits. Either way, the act of applying it seems calming, almost meditative. You're handed a sliver of bone dipped in pigment. A small child gestures for you to turn. You do. You feel the coolness of the mark along your shoulder blade. There, you're one of them now, at least for the moment, back in the center of camp. People are gathering again, less formally this time. A few are lying back, heads resting on woven satchels. Others sit elbow to elbow, sharing bits of dried meat or roasted seeds. There's laughter, low and infrequent, like thunder in the distance. It's not a feast. It's not a ceremony. It's just being. That, too, is a kind of ritual, a shared presence. The world is full of action, but here, stillness is a choice, a way of holding space together. Then someone begins to hum. It's a low sound at first, more vibration than melody. Another joins in, then a third. It's not music the way we know it. There are no lyrics, no chorus, just overlapping tones, like wind in tall grass. You close your eyes again and feel the sound settle into your bones. Historians still debate whether early human music was structured or spontaneous. Some believe it mirrored the calls of animals, the rhythms of water and wind. Others argue it was a precursor to language, a bridge between instinct and intellect. Whatever it is, it's beautiful and fleeting. The hum fades, replaced by the distant call of birds and the rustle of movement, as people begin to drift into smaller tasks once again. The day is soft now. Fatigue begins to stretch its long arms across the camp. A few people lie down on woven mats beneath a tree, heads nestled in the crooks of each other's arms. One man plucks a leaf from a branch above him and lays them on his face, one by one, like a living blindfold. You wonder what dreams he's chasing, and maybe for a moment you wish you could follow. The wind shifts. You feel it stir the leaves and circle around the camp like a curious spirit, poking into fire pits, teasing at the hems of her cloaks, riffling the hair of sleeping children. There's a new scent in the air, sharp, earthy, almost metallic. Rain is coming. Not immediately, but soon enough that everyone feels it in their bones. You glance up and see the elders rise. Not in a hurry, never in a hurry, but with the firm efficiency of those who have weathered more storms than they've counted. One begins to pile kindling under a tree hollow. Another rolls up a mat of woven grass and tucks it beneath a ledge of rock. A third begins circling the perimeter of the camp, humming something under their breath and sprinkling ash in small handfuls. Protective? Symbolic? Maybe both. Historians still argue whether such movements were practical or spiritual, but in early tribes, that distinction was often meaningless. Ritual was embedded in survival, and survival was a ritual all its own. You are handed a bundle of twigs, not to burn, to arrange, into a kind of leaning pyramid near the sleeping shelters. Someone adds dried flowers. Another places a smooth stone at the base. You don't ask what it's for. Somehow, you already understand. This is what they do before storms. The clouds thicken slowly, like ink spilled across the sky. It's not dramatic. No sudden thunder, no torrential wind. Just a gradual dimming. like the forest exhaling through a darker lung. The camp becomes quieter, but not tense. Just quieter. Voices hush. Movements grow smaller. It's as if the tribe itself is curling up. You find a dry spot under an overhang and settle in, your knees tucked to your chest. All around you, others are doing the same, gathered in pairs or trios, forming a constellation of resting shapes across the ground. You watch as someone takes a flint and strikes it gently against a stone. Sparks flare, catch on a tuft of moss, and bloom into fire. Shelter and flame. The eternal duet. One woman begins singing, not loudly. Her voice threads through the rain like a thread of warm smoke. Gentle, unhurried, without any concern for tune or perfection. It's a lullaby, though not in any language you know. It's made of rhythm and breath and repetition. The kind of song you don't learn. You just remember from somewhere deep inside. Rain begins to fall. Soft at first, then steadier. The sound is all-encompassing, but somehow soothing. Drops tapping leaves, dripping from bark, sliding off furs. It becomes a cocoon around you. The fire crackles at your side, and the woman keeps singing, and you feel yourself sinking into the moment like a stone into mud. The storm doesn't scare anyone. They've seen worse. They've slept through worse. But that doesn't mean they don't mark its passing. At the edge of the camp, a small cluster begins drawing the wet dirt. Fingers tracing symbols, spirals, maybe stories. One person adds a leaf. Another scratches a line to the center, then taps it with two fingers. It means something, or maybe it doesn't. The act is what matters. Anthropologists debate what early symbolic drawings meant. Were they maps? Calendars? Visions? Some believe they marked territories. Others say they were dreams turned visible. But most agree on this. They weren't meaningless. You rise and walk over. The mud is cool beneath your toes. You kneel and draw a shape of your own, nothing much. Just a curve, a wave, maybe, or a sleeping eye. Someone nods. That's enough. Night begins to nudge at the sky's edges. The gray deepens, and the forest settles into its nocturnal self. You smell wet bark, animal musk, something faintly floral. The tribe moves closer together now, forming loose huddles beneath the shelters, some sharing coverings of hide or cloth. Others rely on proximity. There's an odd, comforting intimacy to it all. No embarrassment, no boundaries. One man wraps an arm around a boy who isn't his son. Two elders rest their heads together and share a single blanket. Someone laughs in their sleep. Someone else snores softly and is gently nudged, not shamed. You lie back and watch the last light drain from the treetops. The firelight flickers across faces, revealing not fear or even fatigue, but a kind of thoughtful calm. This is not a tribe that fears the dark. They know it. They live by it. It's their clock and their canvas. A child asks something, too softly to hear. An adult replies, equally quiet. Then silence. But not the kind that feels empty. The kind that feels full. As though the camp is holding its breath together, listening for something only they can hear. You pull your fur wrap tighter and shift slightly. The moss beneath you is soft. The fabric of the night stretched smooth and wide across the forest. The rain has lessened now, reduced to a whisper. One last ember breaks free in the fire and spirals upward, vanishing into the dark. And you, half awake, half dreaming, let your thoughts drift. You imagine what they might be seeing in their minds. Not just memories or stories, but futures, maybe fears, maybe visions. The night rituals of early tribes weren't just physical. They were portals, shared dreams, communal spells cast with fire and breath and time. You close your eyes, feeling that gentle gravity again, pulling you inward, back to a time before clocks, before roofs, before electric light and blue screens. The world narrows to this. Warmth, darkness, and the echo of a song you didn't know you knew. When you wake, it's not to sunlight, but to the faint, low rhythm of a tapping stone. Somewhere nearby, a stick is gently striking a hollow log. Not loudly, not urgently, just enough to bring you out of the soft cocoon of sleep and into a world that feels a little cooler, a little quieter, and altogether older. The fire has dimmed the embers. Someone stirs it with a crooked branch, coaxing up a fresh flame. You sit up slowly, the fur wrap slipping from your shoulders. Around you, the others are waking in stages. No one rushes. There is no bell, no alarm, no shrill call to rise and conquer. Just a log tapping, just a fire's breath. In many early tribes, morning was not marked by productivity, but by observation. The first hour wakefulness was often given to listening to the sound of the forest, to the wind's direction, to the strange texture of a dream still clinging to the edges of the mind. It was believed that in that liminal space between sleep and waking, the mind was most in tune with the world's secrets. And so you don't speak, you don't move much, you watch, you wait. A bird calls, soft and long, not quite a song. In the distance, something larger shifts, a deer maybe, or a bear. No one startles. The tribe is used to sharing their sleep with creatures who don't carry flashlights or lock their doors. Someone next to you hums. You realize it's the same tune from last night's rain, now barely above a whisper. A child picks it up, then an elder. And just like that, the camp is gently humming, not in harmony, but in participation. It's less a song than a shared state of being. You rise and stretch, your arms aching with a kind of sleep that comes only from deep safety. The tapping stops. That was the cue. It's time for the morning ritual. But don't picture a structured ceremony. It's much looser than that. One person pours water from a gourd into a carved bowl. Another lays out a few roots and berries on a flat stone. Someone else begins grinding something fragrant with a pestle, sage, perhaps, or a dried mushroom. You can't quite tell, but it smells like the forest turned into a tea. Historians still debate whether these morning preparations were nutritional, medicinal, or magical. The truth is probably all three. To wake in a world of early humans was to re-enter a dream you had briefly left behind. Everything was ritual because everything mattered. You're handed a small piece of bark with something soft smeared on it. You eat it. It tastes like soil and mint and something faintly sweet. Across the fire, another person is chewing on a root that looks like a twisted finger. No one talks. Yet the silence isn't awkward. It's deliberate. Words come later. And then someone does speak. Just one word, low and steady. It could mean begin, or listen, or enough. Whatever it means, it shifts the mood. People begin moving, wrapping bundles, tightening straps, stirring ashes back into the earth. But you're not leaving yet. First comes the telling. A woman stands and begins speaking. Slowly, her voice is soft, but the others focus like she's casting a spell. She's recounting her dream. Not the kind you'd mutter in passing while pouring coffee, but with detail, colors, smells, emotions. She gestures. She pauses. You watch as others nod or glance at each other. In early tribes, dream sharing wasn't indulgent. It was part of the collective memory. Dreams were seen as messages, warnings, even communal experiences. Some anthropologists believe entire journeys were once decided by shared visions recounted at dawn. You don't know this woman's language, but you understand something of it anyway. The arc of her voice, the hush of those around her, the weight of the words. Then another person shares. A man this time. His tone is lighter. People chuckle softly at parts. He mimics a deer stumbling, waving his arms. There's laughter, but not disruptive. The kind that fits into the circle, like another ember. Then it's quiet again. You look up. The trees are glowing with early light. The rain has left beads on the leaves, catching the new sun in golden specks. A squirrel darts along a branch. A crow calls. The camp begins to shift from one rhythm to the next. There's still no urgency. No one is late for anything. Yet there's movement, preparation. For what? Maybe for a journey. Maybe for another day of rest. Maybe for something as small as checking the traps or carving another bowl. One person begins smearing their face with charcoal, drawing a line from cheek to temple. Not war paint, something else. A way of saying, I've seen the night and I carry it with me. You mimic the motion. No one stops you. You feel like part of something, not just a tribe, but a slow conversation across centuries. An understanding that night is not absence, it's presence. And what happens in those hours, beneath the stars, beside the fire, between the hush and hush, is sacred in ways that don't require explanation. The camp is awake now. Fully, the tapping has stopped. The stories have been told. The sun climbs slowly, its light filtering down in fractured beams through the canopy. And yet, part of the night still lingers in the air, not in a spooky way, in a reverent one, as though the dark has left behind a little of itself, in the dreams, in the songs, in the charcoal lines that trace not just faces, but stories. You feel it settle in your bones. The day has begun, but you carry the night with you, not just a memory, but in your walk, in the tempo of your breath, in the hush that still clings to your skin like dew. Even as the camp slowly animates, bowstrings checked, digging sticks sharpened, berries sorted into woven baskets. No one rushes. No one bellows instructions across the clearing. Motion is a continuation, not a rupture. The boundary between night and day, like everything else in this world, is porous. You help gather wood. Each stick is selected carefully. Damp ones tossed aside, dry ones bundled with bark cord. A child points out a mushroom clinging to a log, and someone nearby marks the spot with a loop of twine. It'll be harvested later, maybe dried for trade, or brewed into a potion no one will explain to you. One woman hums a fragment of last night's chant as she walks. You catch yourself repeating it under your breath. The melody is circular, looping back on itself like a lullaby that doesn't want to let go. You don't know the words, but that hardly matters. Somewhere nearby, a man stoops and dips his hands into a stream, then splashes his face, not briskly, but reverently, like he's rinsing away the dream world so he can return to this one. You do the same, crouching low, letting the cold water wake your skin and send little shock waves up your spine. A small ritual, maybe, but it feels earned. Breakfast is sparse but purposeful. A bit of roasted root, some crushed nuts, maybe a strip of dried meat. It isn't meant to satisfy in the modern sense. It's about balance. Eating too much at once is seen as a way to dull the senses, an insult to the wisdom of the night just past. So instead, you nibble. You stay alert. There's talk of moving today. A change of sight, maybe just to rotate the space. Let the old circle breathe. Someone gestures toward the sun, still pale in the sky, but climbing with intent. The elders speak low and nod. One scratches something into the dirt with a stick, a set of loops and crosses that might represent terrain, or memories, or something more abstract entirely. Historians still argue whether such markings were maps, calendars, or early mnemonic devices. The truth likely straddles all three. In this world, utility and meaning are twins, not opposites. Every gesture is freighted with multiple layers. Survival, story, spirit. You help roll up a sleeping mat, brushing off leaf bits and a stray feather. A dog sniffs at your hand. Its coat is patchy, but its eyes are bright. Not pet, not really. More like a co-dreamer. Someone who shares the night watch and the scent trails. You give a gentle pat, and it trots off, tail low, alert to its own duties. Packing is done slowly, with plenty of pauses. One woman unties a bundle of feathers and bones, selects a piece, and tucks it into her hair. Another man fastens a stone charm around his neck, murmuring something under his breath. Perhaps a blessing, perhaps a joke shared with the ancestors. You're not sure which. Then comes a moment of stillness. Not because someone orders it, but because it is felt, like breath held in a room. It passes silently from one person to another. Even the children pause. Even the wind seems to respect it. Everyone turns to the center of the camp. A circle is formed, not perfectly round, but attentive. The fire is just embers now. One of the elders steps forward, holding a carved object wrapped in hide. Slowly, carefully, it is unwrapped. You can't quite see what it is. Maybe a figurine, maybe a relic, maybe just a particularly smooth stone. But the way people look at it tells you it matters. Deeply, it is passed around the circle. Each person holds it for a moment, then passes it on. When it reaches you, it feels warm. Too warm for just sun or hands. You close your eyes. It hums slightly in your palm. Or maybe that's just your heartbeat. This is the final ritual of night. The ceremonial goodbye. An acknowledgement that the dream world has given what it can, and now it must be thanked and released. One child waves at the object before passing it. Another adult simply exhales, long and slow, as if breathing out the last of their sleep. Then the bundle is wrapped again, tied tight, tucked into a pouch on the elder's back. You walk now, not far, just to a new spot, a clearing near trees that grow in a different pattern, a place where the ground feels less used, where night can visit fresh. The tribe begins to set down their things again. You're assigned to fetch water. Another prepares sapling for binding. The children chase a bug with exaggerated solemnity. But even here in daylight, the night's fingerprint lingers. You see it in the charcoal streak on someone's cheek, in the soft way a mother hums to her baby as she swings a pouch from a tree branch, in the way no one shouts, not even once. There's reverence here, but not the rigid kind. This isn't about gods on thrones or rules etched in stone. It's a looser, gentler kind of faith, that the rhythms of sleep and wake, of dusk and dawn, are not opposites, but partners in a dance older than language. You help tie down a tent of woven reeds. Someone nearby chuckles at you, probably as your knot slips, but it's not mean. It's shared amusement, and a chance for someone to show you a better way. By midday, the camp is shaped again. The new fire is lit. The smoke spirals upward in lazy curls. You watch it twist and disappear into the blue, and you think about how this tribe lives. Not in opposition to the night, but in cooperation with it. They don't fear sleep. They court it. They don't dismiss dreams. They elevate them. Night isn't the blank space between action. It's part of the action. A space where the real work gets done. Maybe you've been doing it wrong all this time. Maybe sleep isn't what you escape to. Maybe it's what you should be preparing for every day, like a visit from a wise but unpredictable guest. You sit, you breathe, you feel the hush settling again. Night will come. Not yet, but soon. The sun dips low again, lazy, golden, unhurried. You can feel it shifting, not in the dramatic neon sky Instagram way, but in the real way, the way where shadows stretch just a little too far, and the birds get oddly quiet, and the air suddenly smells like dust and sap and something expectant. The new camp is silent, but not asleep. People move gently now. Hands brush against hide tents. Fingers test knots. Embers are teased to life in a shallow pit. There's no spoken signal, no ceremonial gong, and yet everyone knows the night rituals are about to begin again. This time, you're not an outsider. You help place the gathered branches around the fire ring, spacing them just so. 3 here, 1 across, 2 laid like a gate. Someone grins at your arrangement and makes a subtle correction. You nod, lesson absorbed. In this world, everything is a language, even twigs. The children return with pebbles and feathers, their arms full of treasure. They drop them near the fire pit and begin to arrange them into spirals, circles, one oddly specific shape that may or may not be a mammoth. Adults don't interfere. Ritual is for everyone. A few people settle onto their mats early, lie not to sleep, but to let the body remember rest. A woman hums softly, and the sound seems to draw a man from his tent. He carries a small bowl, steaming faintly. Not soup, something medicinal, or maybe symbolic. You'll never know, but you're invited to sip. It tastes like earth and mint and smoke. Your lips tingle. Historians still argue whether these twilight rituals were more spiritual, practical, or both. Was it community bonding? Was it health? Was it proto-theater? The truth, likely, is yes to everything. You're watching a society where meaning is made not in documents or buildings, but in rhythm, in gesture, in presence. The fire is lit, not with matches, of course. No lighter fluid, just friction, breath, and a lot of patience. It catches slowly, and when it does, no one cheers. There is no applause. The fire is not a spectacle. It's a participant. Around it, people settle. Some bring tools to work on, needles, fibers, small carvings. Others just sit. One begins to braid a long cord from dry grass. Another stares into the flames with the kind of focus you usually only reserve for charging cables that won't work. The chanting begins again. This time, you recognize the cadence. You even hum along for a few bars. It's simple but deep, a melody that seems designed to root you. not lift you. A lullaby for the whole body. Someone begins telling a story. It starts with a hunter, then a bear, then something about stars and a tree that walks. You lose the thread halfway through, but it doesn't matter. The point isn't the plot. It's the telling, the rhythm, the way each word fits into the night, like a note in a symphony no one's ever written down. The fire flickers, and shadows begin to dance on the hides of nearby shelters. Dog yawns. A baby shifts in size. And just like that, it's sleep time again. But it doesn't come with a bedtime. People slip into it like stepping into warm water. One by one, they lie back. Some curl in pairs. Some alone. A few stay upright, eyes half closed, breathing in time with the fire. You do the same. Your mat is warm. Your body remembers the shape of it from last night. You stretch. You exhale. You listen. No one shouts, lights out. There are no lights. Just fire. Just breath. Just this endlessly looping lullaby of a life lived in communion with dusk. And as the last voice fades and the fire becomes red coals and someone murmurs a prayer or a joke, hard to tell, you let yourself drift. Not off, but deeper in. Now the fire is just a soft red glow, pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the ash. The air is cooled, and even the smallest breezes carry with them the hush of restfulness. Around you, the last rustles of movement settle. Blankets being pulled a little higher, shoulders adjusting, someone gently sighing through their nose. It's the sound of a world going still. Not because it has to, but because it wants to. You lie back, the ground firm but familiar beneath you. Your head cushioned against something that smells faintly of moss and smoke. The stars above are faint behind a thin veil of cloud, but one or two still twinkle, as if keeping watch. You can just make out the outline of a shelter nearby, soft and still and deeply peaceful. There's no urgency now. No more footsteps. No more fires to build. No more songs to sing. Just quiet. Deep, natural quiet. The kind that wraps around your ears and shoulders and eyelids like a warm animal curling beside you. You remember the rhythm of the chants, the way the stories swirl like smoke, the feel of cool stone in your hand from earlier that evening. You remember the faces, gentle, tired, sun-warmed. And for a moment, you imagine yourself as one of them, just another figure in the circle, breathing with the fire, listening to the dark. You don't need to dream. You're already inside one. So let it hold you now. This stillness, this hush, this soft pause in the middle of the ancient night. Let your thoughts slow like the coals. Let your muscles go slack like grass after rain. And if you sleep now, you're only continuing the ritual.